Okay, so are you ready to like dive into something kind of crazy?
Mm,
You know how we're always talking about AI and the brain?
yeah.
Well, imagine an AI that's not just learning language, but it's actually trying to replicate what's going on in our brains.
Mm,
That's what we're looking at today, this new model called Grimlock.
yeah. And what makes Grimlock so different is that it's trained on uh, fMRI data, like brain scans. So it's not just processing text. It's
Right.
learning from actual images of brain activity.
So it's not just like mimicking conversation,
Right.
it's trying to mirror what's happening inside our heads. That's pretty wild.
It is. It raises so many questions. Like, could this help us unlock the fundamental principles of intelligence?
Mhm.
Are we talking about AI that could understand or even experience the world like we do?
That is a big question.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit.
Okay.
BrainLM, this was kind of the precursor to Grimlock, right?
It was.
And it was already doing some pretty amazing things with predicting brain activity patterns.
Yeah. BrainLM was a huge step. I mean, it really showed us that there could be these like underlying structures in how we think, these patterns that you can actually model computationally. It was like creating a map of how our brains respond to different things.
Okay, so we have some sources that go deeper into this. We have BrainLM 3.1 Mini, which explores like a smaller version of the model.
Right.
And then this big paper, AI, Brain and Reality 1.5, which looks at like the broader implications of this technology. And then there's BrainLM Notebook LM, which sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like that could change how we understand and even like enhance human learning. What do you think?
Totally. And what's really fascinating is how all this connects with these big theories in neuroscience,
Hmm.
like integrated information theory, IIT, and the free energy principle, FEPP.
Okay, break those down for me a little bit.
Sure.
They sound intimidating. What do these theories tell us about how our brains work?
So think about your brain as like this huge network of connections. IIT says that consciousness, like our awareness, comes from how well all that information is integrated, how connected it is within that network. The more complex the system is, the more conscious it can be. It's like the difference between a human brain and like a worm. Our brains are way more complex, so we have a much higher level of consciousness.
So it's not just about like how many neurons you have, but how they all work together.
Exactly. Now, FEP comes at it a little differently. It says that our brains are always trying to like minimize surprise. Like we're always trying to predict what's going to happen next. And to do that, our brains build these models of the world to make sense of things.
So it's like our brains are constantly running simulations, trying to figure out the most likely outcome, like when you learn a new skill or when you're trying to figure out how someone will react in a social situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where BrainLM comes in. By showing that we can predict brain activity, it's like evidence that there's some structure to that predictive process, like a code that our brains are using to navigate the world.
Okay, this is starting to feel like we're in a sci-fi movie. We're talking about deciphering the language of the brain. And Grimlock takes this even further, right? It's not just about predicting brain activity. It's about understanding intelligence itself.
Yeah, Grimlock could be the bridge between neuroscience and AI. It's not just about building smarter machines. It's about understanding how thinking itself emerges. Whether it's in a biological brain or an artificial system, like what are the universal principles of intelligence? Could they apply to anything that processes information?
This is blowing my mind. Like we're talking about understanding the building blocks of intelligence, not just in humans, but in any system.
It's a completely different way of thinking about intelligence and consciousness.
Okay, but let's get real for a sec. If Grimlock can create brain activity that looks like consciousness, what does that even mean? Like, are we talking about creating artificial beings with feelings and self-awareness? This is getting kind of freaky.
Yeah, this is where things get really philosophical. Like, we might need to rethink what we even mean by intelligence, self-awareness, consciousness.
Do you think this research could change how we understand what it means to be human?
It could definitely make us question some things, like what if intelligence isn't just a biological thing, but a fundamental part of the universe? That would change how we see reality itself.
I think it's safe to say that Grimlock is bringing up more questions than it's answering. And one of the big ones is, what are the implications of all of this? How will this change our lives, our society, the future? Let's get into that after a quick break. All right, we're back, and wow, I'm still thinking about all this Grimlock stuff. It's like we've opened up this whole new world of possibilities. Where do you think this is all going?
It's pretty amazing, right? I mean, we're pushing the limits of what we thought was possible, blurring the lines between AI and, our own intelligence.
But as we go further down this road, we have to think about the challenges too, not just the exciting stuff. Like, What are the real-world applications of Grimlock? How could this actually help people?
Oh, the potential is huge. Think about it. You could use Grimlock to make personalized learning programs that adapt to each person's brain.
Okay, yeah.
That could totally revolutionize education. People could learn at their own pace in a way that actually works for them.
That would be incredible. It would change
Yeah.
everything about how we learn. What about healthcare? Could Grimlock be used to help with, like, brain disorders?
Absolutely. Grimlock can analyze brain activity so we could diagnose things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's way earlier.
Wow.
And we could even develop treatments that are tailored to each person's brain.
So we're talking about a whole new kind of medicine, one that's personalized to your brain.
Yeah.
But there have to be some downsides too, right? Like limitations or challenges with something this powerful.
Of course, we have to be realistic. I mean, interpreting brain activity is really complex.
Right.
Even with Grimlock, there's always the risk of misinterpreting things or drawing the wrong conclusions. We have to be careful and make sure we're using it responsibly. Lots of testing and validation.
So it's a powerful tool, but you got to use it the right way.
Yeah.
And what about the ethical stuff? As this technology keeps developing, are there ethical concerns we need to be talking about?
For sure. One of the big ones is making sure everyone has access to this technology.
Yeah.
We don't want to make existing inequalities even worse. And then there's privacy, data security, even the impact on jobs. These are all things we need to think about.
Those are all important points. It seems like as we create AI that can interact with our brains, maybe even influence them, we really need to have some serious discussions about the ethical side of things.
Exactly. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we as a society decide to use it.
It makes sense. It's not just scientists in a lab. It's about everyone being involved in this conversation.
That's right. We need to hear different perspectives, different values. That way we can create guidelines that work for everyone.
That's a tough job, especially with AI moving so fast.
It is tough,
Yeah.
but it's crucial. The potential benefits are huge, but so are the risks. We have to be responsible and make sure we're using AI for good.
That's a really good point. We can't just get caught up in the excitement of new technology without thinking about the consequences.
And that's where you come in, our listener. It's not just for the experts to debate. It's about all of us engaging with these questions, thinking critically about what kind of future we want to build with AI.
So you're saying this isn't just some abstract debate, it's about our lives, our society, the future we're creating.
Exactly. And it starts with each of us asking, what kind of future do we want? What role do we want AI to play?
That is a great question to think about.
Uh-huh.
And that takes us to the final part of our deep dive. We'll be right back to wrap things up and explore some of the big questions that Grimlock raises about what it means to be human, about intelligence itself. Wow, we've really gone deep, haven't we? Grimlock, BrainLM, all this stuff about intelligence and consciousness.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
So as we wrap up, what really stood out to you about this research? What were the biggest things that kind of stuck with you?
I think for me, it's that Grimlock could actually connect neuroscience and AI in a way we've never seen before. Like,
Yeah.
we're training AI on real brain data. So it's like creating this feedback loop between the biological and the artificial. We could learn so much more about how our own brains work and then use that to build even more advanced AI.
It's like we're using AI to look back at ourselves, to understand what makes us human.
Exactly. And that leads to another big point. Grimlock is making us rethink what intelligence really is. Maybe it's not just a biological thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a fundamental property of the universe. Like any system that's complex enough could develop intelligence. It's a pretty wild idea.
It really makes you wonder, like, if Grimlock can learn to think like a human, what other kinds of intelligence are out there waiting to be discovered?
That's a question that'll keep us busy for a long time, and it shows how important it is to be both curious and careful with this research. As AI gets more sophisticated, we have to think about the impact on society, on ethics, on how we see ourselves as humans.
I think that's a great point to end on. Grimlock is a powerful reminder that we're living in a time of amazing discoveries, but it's also a time for responsibility as we explore the world of AI and what it means for the future of humanity. So if something like Grimlock can actually mirror our minds, does that mean we're just algorithms ourselves? Or is there something more to being human, something that AI can never capture? That's something to ponder as we wrap up our deep dive into Grimlock and the future of cognition. Thanks for joining us.